This map represents an area known as the National Radio Quiet Zone, or NRQZ. It covers a vast area of land in the United States in which radio transmissions are heavily restricted by law and the threat of transmissions is constantly monitored. The National Radio Quiet Zone was established by the Federal Communications Commission in docket number 11745 of November 19, 1958, and by the Interdepartment Radio Advisory Committee in document 3867/2 of March 26, 1958. Its purpose was to minimise possible harmful interference to the National Radio Astronomy Observatory, or NRAO, in Greenbank, West Virginia, as well as the radio receiving facilities for the United States Navy in Sugar Grove, West Virginia. This zone is still in place today for the purposes of carrying out scientific research and gathering military intelligence unhindered by spurious or, any RF emissions. The NRQZ still encompasses the Greenbank Observatory in Greenbank, West Virginia, and the Sugar Grove Station in Sugar Grove, West Virginia, two extremely important radio sites. The Greenbank Observatory is home to the world's largest fully steerable radio telescope, and was established in 1956, making its first observations by 1958. Sugar Grove Station is a National Security Agency communications site that intercepts all international communications entering the eastern United States. Built by the Naval Research Laboratory in the early 1960s to gather intelligence on Soviet radar amongst other things, it later became part of the Echelon network. Echelon was used to monitor the military and diplomatic communications of the Soviet Union and its Eastern Bloc allies during the Cold War, and grew significantly during the 20th century. Restrictions of any radio transmissions are greater within a 10-mile radius of the Greenbank and Sugar Grove facilities, and the vast majority of omnidirectional and high-power transmissions are prohibited. The most severe restrictions to the general public are imposed within a 20-mile radius of the Greenbank Observatory, but we'll come to this soon. As you cross into the zone, there's no border and no big warning signs, but you'll notice a sharp drop in cell coverage, and most radio stations will disappear from the dial. This is because most of the broadcast transmitters in the central area of the quiet zone, closest to Greenbank and Sugar Grove, have to operate at a massively reduced power than what would normally be allowed, and they also have to use directional antennas. This limits the amount of broadcast radio you can receive, and also means that cable and satellite services are essential for television within the zone. There are some exceptions, however. Emergency services radios are naturally exempt, and surprisingly CB and amateur radio are permitted too. Large transmitter owners, including television stations in certain areas, have to coordinate their operations with the Greenbank Observatory. The only broadcast radio stations in the centre of the quiet zone are part of the Allegheny Mountain Radio Network. Exceptions to these restrictions are determined on a case-by-case basis after an application, and you have to have a good reason for transmissions. A more lenient view is taken in cases such as remote alarm systems, repeaters for emergency services, and NOAA weather radio services. The most severe restrictions to the public are imposed within the 20-mile zone I spoke about earlier. The observatory patrols this area regularly, hunting for radios or in fact any device emitting excessive electromagnetic radiation, such as microwave ovens, Wi-Fi access points, and faulty electrical equipment. These patrols are carried out by the Greenbank Interference Protection Group, and they have their own patrol vehicles and have done for many years, and upon finding a suspect source of interference, they usually ask for it to be switched off and not used again. Their vehicles have a main antenna for signals ranging from 25 MHz to 4 GHz, while small antennas operate as part of a direction finding array. It's alleged that even turning on your smartphone can be detected by the observatory, and they claim to be able to pick up an iPhone on Saturn, even in airplane mode, using the main telescope. The patrols don't have any legal power of enforcement and can't arrest or fine anyone, but they refer cases to the FCC, who can impose a fine of $50 per day for interference caused to the Greenbank facility. They'll often work with people to solve the problem, however, rather than just slapping them with a fine. Cellular telephone use in the central area of the zone is also heavily restricted. In the zones closest to Greenbank, there's no cell service whatsoever. In fact, residents in Greenbank itself, population just 143, have to rely on older technology due to the lack of cell and Wi-Fi connectivity. There are still dial-up telephones in use as well as many payphones. Most resort to email and messaging via their wired home computers. Paper maps are still common, and the cell phone here for most serves as nothing more than a calculator and a camera. Many residents speak highly of a life without social media and constant and instant connectivity to anyone and everyone, but there are still downsides to living within the zone. If a driver hits a deer or their vehicle breaks down, they can't call for help from their cell phones, and there's the slow internet, which causes complications, especially for students. While most Greenbank residents haven't known daily life outside the quiet zone, the broader region has attracted a group of people who crave an escape from the noise of modern-day America. Over the years, the area has become a refuge for some who believe they suffer from a widely disputed medical condition known as electromagnetic hypersensitivity, which they claim is caused by radiation from cell towers and Wi-Fi. Despite all of this, there has however been a sharp rise in the number of home Wi-Fi networks identified by the NRAO on their patrols, with one report of 175 networks located within 2 miles of the facility. The NRQZ covers approximately 13,000 square miles and straddles for the most part the borders of Virginia and West Virginia, and also includes a small part of Maryland. Roughly 50% of the zone is spread across the Blue Ridge Mountains of West Central Virginia, and the other roughly 50% covers the Allegheny Mountains of East Central West Virginia. An extremely small part of the zone spreads into Maryland. The Greenbank Interference Protection Group has attempted to control interference in the zone by dividing it into 5 sectors based on FCC and other government laws and regulations. Zone 1 and Zone 2 are actually inside the boundary of the Greenbank Observatory. The entire site is designated as Zone 1 except some extremely small portions such as housing, visitor and laboratory areas. These exclusions are designated as Zone 2. Zone 1 is known as the Radio Astronomy Instrument Zone, and only essential transmissions of any kind are permitted here. The reason for this is that the slightest interference can destroy weeks or months of crucial data, a similar reason for the radio quiet zone surrounding our Jodrell Bank Observatory here in the UK. Even gasoline-powered vehicles are prohibited in Zone 1, as their spark ignition engines generate significant radio interference. This means that all vehicles within Zone 1 must be diesel-powered. Zone 2 is also called Observatory Building Zone. Here, transmissions permitted and licensed by the NRQZ are allowed, but Wi-Fi, cordless phones, cell phones and any other form of wireless apparatus is prohibited. Even digital cameras aren't allowed here. Zones 3 and Zone 4 are governed by the Radio Astronomy Zoning Act, part of the West Virginia Code. This regulates radio transmitters within 2 and 10 miles of the Greenbank Observatory, respectively. It's within these zones that interference to observations are monitored and logged. The source of the interference is identified, and if a person's involved, they can expect a visit to request the interference to be stopped. FCC enforcement is used as a last resort, but most cases are resolved amicably. And finally, Zone 5 is the boundary of the NRQZ. The zone administrator at Greenbank manages the enforcement policies. So that's the National Radio Quiet Zone. If you live here or have worked in this area, then let us know in the comments below or drop me an email.